Hey, you having a tough time making a decision on what Festool track saw is right for you? The 75, the 60, or the 55? This video will give you a lot of helpful hints to make the right decision. So when you look at the saws, an easy decision is, duh, this has a bigger, the 75 has a bigger depth of cut because it's got a larger, what? Blade. And that's how you really truly make your decision. But let me eliminate some of the confusion that you see out there about the depth of cut. 75 is the depth of cut, but that's off of the guide rail. Same thing with the 55. That's off of the guide rail. So hear me out on this. The thickness of the guide rail, incorporating the PFT strips here and splinter guard and everything is 5 millimeter. Always remember that. So you always have to subtract 5 millimeter from the number and you get a 70 millimeter depth of cut. Okay, so let's break that down to our North American audience, and it's 2 3/4 at 90. That's important. Same thing with the 55. Take the 55, subtract 5, it's 50 millimeters, and that's roughly 2 inches of depth, or 50 millimeters. Now here's a little bit of the confusing part. This is the TS60. This has come out in recent years. It's not really a 60 depth of cut off of the guide rail. It's actually 62. So subtract 5 from 62, you're left with 57 millimeters depth of cut at 90. And that equates to an imperial 2 1/4 depth of cut. So here's another huge decision maker, and it comes about because everybody wants to do waterfall furniture off of a slab. And this is where the 75 really shines, because you got to look at your thickness of your material. And you want to cut a 45 on there to what? Bring the grain around. So here is where you have to really pay attention when you look at the thickness of what these saws can do at 45 degrees when you're doing a bevel. Okay, so with the 75, it's 55 millimeters depth of cut at 45. That means you can do 2 1/8. So you could do easily 8/4 material on a 45, which is probably more than enough. And then I'll skip to the 55, you could do 45 millimeters at 1 11/16 of thick material. Now, the TS60 kind of fits right in between, where at 45 degrees, you can cut, it's pretty simple, you can cut 45 millimeters thick, and that's 1 3/4. So that's some of the things that when you look at depth of cut, it's at 90, but also all those bevel cuts for some really trick cuts that you need to do with a track saw. And this is where I truly believe these shine when you're doing beveled cuts. This is in the middle of the video, and this is something I definitely wanted to call out. If you have an older version of the TS55 EQ, you may want to upgrade. And I'm going to do 2 cuts, one with this saw. This was built in 2005. And then the newer version. And a lot of people don't know about the newer version, what the biggest difference in my eyes is. This has a 2.2 thick kerf blade on it, where the huge upgrade on the TS55 FEQ, both are corded saws, is the 1.8 millimeter. And also important, it's a different size blade. The TS60 has that 1.8 millimeter. I will tell you right now, it's a night and day difference in ripping down sheet goods, but also ripping down hardwoods. Okay, now, go-to saw is the TS55 for ripping down really thick hardwoods because of the higher amperage. All right, but it still has a 2.6 millimeter thick blade. That is why the TS60 is really starting to shine in my eyes, because you still get that, 57 millimeter, 2 1/4 rip with it. So now we're gonna start talking about performance. And I truly wish you were in the shop with me, but as I go through this, I will do some ripping to compare the old and new 55, but also ripping down some hardwoods, comparing the 60 to the 75, and I may just throw the new 55 in there for you too. So I got my 55 set up on plywood, and I'm gonna make a rip with this. And hopefully this video shows you with the 2.2 millimeter, the older version, it's a little slower. So as I'm cutting, I'm not pushing from the side, I'm pushing from behind and just letting the saw do its job. Okay, so that was the 2.2 millimeter cut. Okay, so I reset for the TS55 FEQ. Now, really important, this is with the 1.8 millimeter. So I'm gonna start forward of the cut like I always do, get behind the saw, and make the cut. And now I'm putting the same amount of pressure on there, just so you can see. The dust extraction is always exceptional. And I'm gonna tell you, I truly wish that this video had feel-o-vision because hopefully you saw how effortless it is to cut with the TS55. Now, let's see if there's a difference with the TS60 on 3/4 ply. Okay, so let's try the TS60 on 3/4. Wow, what a great saw. Okay, so a difference between a 55 and 60, I have to call this out. The 55, like all the old saws, has a riving knife, and it's right in line with the blade. The important thing about that is that when I'm ripping down like case hardened woods, not plywood, but case hardened woods where it wants to pinch, that riving knife falls in there, so it helps eliminate kickback. That's a true riving knife. The 75 has it as well. But here's the difference. Now with the 60, you're gonna notice as I bring it down, okay, that is not a riving knife. This actually is not in line with the blade. It rides here. So if I encounter any kind of kick while it's running and this lifts off with the momentum of the blade, it will shut off, and that is what is called kickback stop. It automatically resets itself. Okay, so let's test all 3 saws on this piece of ash that we have left over. We're gonna do a rip because we're gonna go through the long grain, and this is 48 millimeters thick. So we are going to max out the TS55 FEQ. I'm just gonna bring it all the way down for max. So very important, this is hardwood. Plywood, not so much. But with hardwood, I always check to see that this blade is going down in the plunge before I enter the material. So I start it up full, and I make the cut. I wish we truly had feel-o-vision, because this 1.8 millimeter, a full 48 depth of cut on this material, left not even a single saw blade mark. And it's very well powered. So here's the TS60. Yes, it has more capacity. So this is where you really have to think it out. If this was true 8/4, this is 48 millimeters. 8/4 is 50 millimeters, but a lot of the time when it's in the rough 8/4, the 55 won't cut all the way through. The 60 will, because this at 90 gives you 2 1/4 or 57 millimeter. And I will tell you, that is a wicked, wicked smooth cut. Now it's time for the 75. Remember, full depth of cut at 90 is 2 3/4. So say you have some layup material and you need to get that depth of cut, you always have the 75. All right, now look at the depth on that. It's amazing. I should have said this early in the video, every single saw that I have used comes with a stock blade. Okay, that was a high tooth count on the 55 and 60. This on the 75 comes for what Festool knows you're going to use it for, a lot of thick timber. So this is a 36 tooth blade. So let's make the cut. And this is that 2.6 millimeter cut. And I'm going to tell you, once again, with that, there's barely a saw blade mark on there. Okay, so here is the application that the 75 truly shines at. I'm going to waterfall this edge. Okay, I'm cutting at 45. But one of the things I have seen over the years is folks not getting a perfect 45, and it's pretty simple. Make it all in one cut, but also, come over here, cameraman, make sure your hand is on the sole of the saw. Take it like this, make sure you're forward of the cut, and also, another reason it doesn't go together well after the cut is because this is not dead flat. Make sure your material is dead flat. Okay, so I'm gonna start it up. And I'm gonna let the machine do its job. Making sure my hand stays solid on the sole so it doesn't tip, and come all the way through and bring it up. That way there, that will allow you to get, come in here, Chris, that perfect point on your 45. The point to be made on this bevel cut is this is 48 millimeter. The TS55 will not do it, and the TS60 only does 1 3/4, and the TS55 only does 1 3/16 at 45. So this is why this really shines, and hopefully that allows you to make a decision which saw you need or what you're going to use it for the majority of the time. So, you've heard me say throughout the video, what are you going to use your Tracksaw for the majority of the time? And I've seen this for so many years. People would say, hey, if the 75 will cut the 3/4 plywood, and someday I may need that 2 3/4, or I may need to do that 45 at 2 1/8, then I'll take the 75. And what happens is they get it, and the majority of the time they're ripping down plywood. They should have gotten a 55 or a 60. That's one thing I've seen. The other one, and here's the elephant in the room for everybody, how much? And it's pretty simple. I priced out all 3 of these online. And when I looked at it, I wanted to make sure, because this may be your first Tracksaw, you got to get a guide rail. So I put it in the plus packages that are offered out there. So the 75 is $975, comes with a rail, a track. The 60 comes in at $899, roughly $900 with a rail, but it has all the bells and whistles. It's the newest Tracksaw, and you see how well it works with a brushless motor. Now, when you look at the TS55 with the rail, and you're gonna say, wow, that thing did a lot of stuff on that plywood. And if you're building kitchens, boxes, cabinets, you could save $200 because this comes in at $699 with a guide rail. So that's another definite consideration, is the price point. So we have put a lot into this video, and we could have put a whole lot more, but we wanted to give you the right points to consider when you're trying to make a decision. And hopefully I haven't confused you too much. But over the years, this is what I have seen in making a decision what track saw is right for you. So as we always say in the SedgeTool shop, be positive, stay sharp, and we mean wicked sharp.